Is this microphone on? I don't know. It's been a minute since I recorded a video. I think I forgot how. Hey folks, thanks for joining me today, man. It's been a minute, but I've got something nice to share with you today. I'm going to share with you how I took this photo here and how I created the ladder that this Black Skulls Mezco Death Brigade figure is leaning on. And I want to share with you, kind of some of the challenge in how, I had to create the fall off from the top of the ladder to the street view, and share with you how I created these ladders here and rusted them up and painted them up and stuff like that. As we scroll through the images here, you'll see painting and weathering these types of little props are fun, and they're pretty simple to do. You can approach it with washes. You can use products from jars that you buy. You can use pigments. There's just so many ways that you can do these, and the result is always nice. Here I wanted some rusty old pitted kind of looking fire escape type ladders that you see on the side of brick buildings in an industrial area, and so that's what I did here. I modeled these up in Fusion 360 and got them off the printer, and you'll see me from start to finish with these ladders here in the video, how I get them off the build plate here. I've got them in the isopropyl alcohol and then once I take them off the IPA, then I've got to get them in there and put them in some warm water, and what the warm water does is it helps me release it from the build plate, because these are pretty fragile pieces, and there's a potential to break them when you remove them from the build plate. So I want to make sure that the warm water helps reduce the chance of breaking them. It gets them off the build plate a little bit easier, because it warms it up a bit. And so at any rate, that is a lasagna pan, but it works great for 3D printing, dunking 3D prints in warm water. You can go get you some at the dollar store and get a whole stack of them, and it works great for stuff just like this here. But check out this really cool clean print. Next, once I get it out of the IPA and the warm water, and I remove the supports and cure it, it's time to paint it. And so I hit these with a coat of the Rust-Oleum rust colored paint that you see here, because it's a real durable bottom finish, and it's got the primer and everything in it, and it can withstand some of the scuffing and stuff that I do later on to the pieces. So once the paint dries, then I just take it over here, and you can do this with washes or whatever other method you want to use for what's called pre-shading. And what it is after I go through and hit it with the base coat of that rust color, I'm just going to go back through. In this case, I'm going to use an airbrush, and I'm just going to add black paint in parts that I want to create more depth, and parts that I want to add shadow and shading to. And so you'll see here I hit the rungs of the ladder where they attach to the frame rails. I'll hit the sides of the frame rails. I'll build up some light blacks in areas that I think I want to enhance some of the the shading and the shadowing, and everything that you add on top of this base layer of the primer, it just adds another layer of depth as the other layers of paint begin to cover it and change tone and things like that. It all helps in creating more layers to the piece, and you can never have enough layers when you're doing a piece that you want to make it look weathered or rusted out, aged and distressed in some way. And so I'll do the same thing to both of the ladder pieces here, and these are both a 6-inch tall ladder piece by about 1.80 of an inch. So I want to try something here, and I bought this Vallejo white pigment a long time ago, and I've never had a chance to use it because I keep thinking, what can I use white pigment on that I can't use white paint on? But here's a perfect example. So once we take the ladders that we've spray painted with our base coat of the brown rust paint, and then we do our pre-shading on them, I went ahead and brushed this white pigment on very generously, and it sticks right to the piece, man. I mean, this and to my fingers, as you can see, it sticks everywhere. But I brush off the extra, and once I get a good white on there that I'm happy with, I'll throw the rest of it in the paper towel away, and I'll hit these with Mod Podge, and I use a matte Mod Podge aerosol. Works great, leaves no brush strokes, and it dries super quick, and that sets that white pigment in there. And you can see I'll go through after I lay down that white pigment, and I'll begin to add some of the rust colors on top of the white. And the white does two things. It gives it that extra layer of white paint that we're going to add the rust on top of. But if I was to add the rust colors on top of the brown rust, you wouldn't see them. So this is all done in steps to build up the colors. It goes from the base dark brown to a lighter white that we can then again add darker rust pigments to. And right here I've got the AK Terrain's rust corrosion texture, which is another really cool product, but you can do the same thing very similar if you just use a fine stucco powder or a fine grout, a really fine grout. If you use those types of products from Home Depot, though, be sure to wear some gloves and possibly maybe wear a mask, just because they do create a fine crystalline dust and you probably don't want to breathe it. So we'll go through it and we'll just stipple this corrosion texture on all the parts I think that, it needs to be corroded and rusty textured out kind of look. It's just a matter of what you like. And once that gets on there, I've got them both there. I let them dry a little bit, and I love the way they look. So I think, though, that as with anything, you need to go back through of this type and add some more shading and some more, dark areas using like this pigment here. We did pre-shade in the beginning, and that is totally necessary. But at the end here, sometimes some of the pre-shading might get a little bit muted because of the layers that we add on top of it. So I'll go back through here and I'll create another bit of sooty looking shading and shadowing with this black pigment, and it worked out really great, man. This is a great pigment from Vallejo just for this type of thing. I mean, you can have all the rust colors on there you want, but unless there's something really dark in there to contrast the oranges and the yellows of the rust, it really doesn't look authentic. And so this black pigment really helps with that. And I just really love the way that it comes out. And you just brush it on wherever you want. And once again, I'll spray this with a Mod Podge aerosol to get it all set down in there, and that way it's permanent. It's never going to come out of there. Brush the excess off with a chip brush from Home Depot here. Those chip brushes come in handy for lots of little cleanup jobs, just like this right here, And that pigment, it sticks really good to everything, so hands included, paper towels, tables, all of it. At any rate, these are looking great, man. When you can go from an idea in your head to pouring a liquid into a printer and coming out with a solid physical product, that's magic. That's 3D printing. Check out how these look on the wall. I mean, here's a quick dio that I put together for these ladders and this figure in particular. That's about 18 inches from where the figure's top of the head is to the street level. My job in this photo that I'm creating is to create as much fall off, as much depth from the top of the ladder to the street level, and that's pretty tough. And so what I did, I used a macro lens, 100mm macro, set it up right above the figure, focused on his eye. I set my camera on what's called a swing arm, and that allows me to get right over the top of the figure. And I counterbalance the weight of the camera with a pair of Chucky tennis shoes. I just put a counterweight on the back, a bag of water and shoes and whatever I got available to act as a counterweight. But so you can see here that there's a great bit of fall off between the figure and the street level. I've got focus locked in on his eye right there. 4-second exposure, f16, ISO 100. You could see my Lume Cube lighting up into the bounce card, bouncing that nice soft orange light back onto the street below him, creating some really nice separation the warm street lights, and he's climbing up out of that into a different color temp above the city. And so that kind of helps sell the idea that there's quite a bit of a distance between him and the street below, because that's a bit of a challenge. And so the macro lens worked out to be really the best lens for this. I tried another lens and I was just much happier with the result of the macro. You could see my light there, my main light on the C-stand. It's a snoot with a grid in it, and it's coming in at an angle lighting his face. I could gain some more work room in there if I took the lens hood off the lens, but I don't ever recommend doing that because light enters the lens from all different angles when you do that, and you have a potential for getting lens flare and low contrast images with low sharpness. So always keep your lens hood on if you can. And so, you know, I mean, this is just a really cool setup. It's a pretty simple shot once I figured out the best way to approach it, and I really had to sit and think about the best way to get this done to make it look like there was a lot of fall off between him and the street level. And the swing arm is a great tool for that. If you're comfortable with, you know, extending your camera out over a prop or a set with, you know, only a bag of shoes acting as the counterweight, you know. And as with any macro shot, when you're this close to the figure or whatever it is you're shooting with macro, the depth of field is very shallow, and the slightest movement is exacerbated, exaggerated, and enhanced, and all those words in the lens. So you want to get your focus, set your camera on 10-second timer, actuate the shutter, and stand back away from the camera. Stand far away from that thing as you can, let it do the exposure, and don't move, because I promise you will get a blurry shot, especially at a 4-second exposure. You can see the back of the camera there as I have the screen open. The most minor movements really show up, you know, in the lens. I mean, it's just a really exaggerated, you know, effect. And so you want to, being able to use a touch screen here is nice because I can access almost everything from that touch screen. Makes it really nice. And I just want to ensure here that the focus is locked right on his eye. And once it is, you know, then I'll stand back out of the way and I'll get the shot, and I'll turn the lights off. But that's my whole setup on this right here. Those white cards make the small light source seem bigger by bouncing the light back onto the scene, and they soften the light up quite a bit. If I just turn the lume cubes the other way, then it would be a much harsher light down below. And so those bouncing it in off the white card back into the scene really creates that soft look. And I think I've got like a light orange gel on there, and that just creates sort of a warm tungsten kind of street lamp look down below him, and I think it works pretty nicely. And I gotta say, I need to wear better shoes in these videos if you're going to be looking at my feet. And you'll also see a pillow on the floor down beside me. I promise I don't sleep in this room with my figures and dioramas. It's there for my old knees to get down on the floor and make adjustments. So, no, I don't sleep in this room. But anyway, some other things to look for when you're doing macro are good lighting, stopping down far enough to get the depth of field you want, but not too far to get diffraction. There is a point at which you can stop down too far and you just start going backwards in image quality. And so you want to look for that. Good lighting when you stop down to get the most depth of field you can get out of the shot. That requires a lot more light to be put onto the scene. So I have to adjust my flash in order to create enough, flash burst that will give me what I want. And then I've got a 4-second exposure also, but that 4-second exposure has nothing to do with the flash. It only has something to do with catching the light from the lume cube. But at any rate, folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and also for those who stayed to the end and you want the STL files for the latter, I will give them to you free if you click the link in the video description. Look at that. Take care, man.